Hey, what's going on? This is Ajax with Tactical Airsoft Supply and Ajax Customs in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm here to do another tutorial. I'm doing a Dean's connector change out from Tamiya to Dean's on this Aries Amoeba Honey Badger guy. So I'm going to be just showing you guys how I change out Tamiya connector to Dean's. It's pretty simply done. So first off, I think I'll start off with the battery. No, actually, I'll start off with the rifle. Reason being is, especially with the Amoebas or Aries guns, they don't really mark the color or, the polarity of the wire. It's just kind of silver. So we want to match that up first to make sure we don't solder it on incorrectly. The tools I'll be using today will be, soldering iron. I got like a 50-watt Weller soldering iron, which is this guy here. You want it to get pretty hot. That way it'll work better. Also, just a pair of snips and wire cutters, as well as a helping hand. These guys are really nice to have when you're doing a lot of soldering. So I'm going to go ahead and start by disassembling the rifle to get to the wiring. As you can see, it's a Tamiya connector, but if you could also check that the wiring here, it's all pretty much the same color. So if I cut this off directly, I'm not going to really know which one's positive and negative. And that could be really bad, especially for these Amoebas, since they have, electronic boards that could be easily fried. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut this shrink wrap a little bit to expose the wiring, just so we can get access to it. And then, best way to tell is, use the battery that goes with the gun and just simply connect it like so. And then I can see this one here is the red wire and this one's the black. So I'm just going to mark the positive lead with a marker, if it's possible to do. Maybe use a different marker that'll actually mark. It's a pen. All right, this will work. Okay, paint marker. Can't really go wrong with the paint marker. All right, so now that that's marked, I'm just going to cut it directly after I unhook the battery, of course. So don't have too much room to work with. It's a pretty tight spot, but I'm sure I'll be able to manage. Actually, let's go ahead and just going to go ahead and take this out. I need to make sure that that Dean's connector can fit through the little slot here. That's going to be a little bit easier. Oh, it looks like we have a bit of a problem. So the Dean's connector is not going to fit through. That means I have to pretty much wire it while it's on there. So I think I'll just go ahead and extend the wire before I put the connector on. That means it's going to be a little bit more difficult to disassemble in the future if it ever needs it. So I just use the wire snippers and I just expose some of the bare wire. And then I'm going to go ahead and use some of this alpha wire here just to extend it. So first of all, I'm going to do what's called tinning. I'm going to use my soldering wire and the iron to apply solder to the wire. That way it will, basically preset it for soldering together. This is a flux core. You want to make sure you use flux. Flux actually heats up or helps the solder melt and helps it stick a lot better. So first of all, I'm going to apply it to the tip of the iron. And you always want to make sure that there is solder on the tip. Otherwise, you're not gonna be able to apply it in a good fashion. And then I'm gonna just put some heat onto the wire itself, and then apply the solder to the wire. So I put the iron underneath the wire, and then the soldering wire itself on top of it, and it heats up, and then it goes ahead and saturates the entire wire. from there, I'm just going to cut a random length. It's not going to really be too critical. And then again, I'm going to just take the sheet off. This is where your helping hand comes in handy if you need it. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing I did before. So now that that's all tinned up, I'm going to just connect them together. So that's going to make a pretty strong bond there. It's not impossible to break, but it's more likely to actually break the rest of the wire than it is to break this little bond. I'm going to use some probably 30 seconds wrap. And then we'll go ahead and just apply some shrink wrap just to the patch on the wire. Like so. And then you have your heat gun, of course. So that actually looks pretty nice. So I'm going to do the same thing to the negative terminal. Hope you guys are having a good day today. Just sitting here soldering wires all day, that's what I'm doing. Okay, so there's that. Okay, that's going to be pretty nice. Now I'll be able to tell which one's positive and negative in the future. All right. Next step would be to put this cap back on, or the stock. So if you're going to be converting these amoebas to Deans, it's probably best to, do any of your internal work first before you, wire it up. That way, you're not having to take the connector off. So I'm going to go ahead and just even up the wire, just simply by lining them both up and then cutting it straight across. Then I'm going to go ahead and take the wrap off both terminals. So this is more easily done on the rifle side because there's no battery hooked up to it. You don't really want to expose both leads at the same time on the battery, because if you do, they can touch and then it'll fry your battery. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and just tin these both. Then I'm going to use the male T-plug or Dean's connector. The male always goes to the rifle, the female goes to the battery, and that's so you don't, have exposed ends. From here, I'm going to install the shrink wrap for the connector, and I put enough length so it doesn't heat it up and shrink it while it's going. So if you use an extreme, or a fair amount of heat on the iron, this one dials from 1 to 5. I have it set like 4.5, and I think that's like watts, or 40 watts or 50 watts or something like that. But that allows the solder to melt quickly, and it doesn't, it heats up quickly in a small area instead of spreading that heat out. If the iron was cooler, it would take longer for that solder to melt, and it would just, drag heat down the wire, causing the shrink wrap to melt or the connector itself to have problems. So the next thing I'm going to do is tin the connector itself. Same principle. You just kind of touch them together, put heat on directly onto the metal, and make sure you're using the flux wire. and it'll tin it just nice and cool right there. So there's that. Now on the T-plug, the top of the T is always positive. That way your Dean's connector will match with mine. If you put the, mix it up or have the backwards either on the gun or on the battery, when you plug it into someone else's battery by chance, it'll just increase the likelihood of, just short circuiting it and causing the battery to explode or damaging the gun. So you always want to remember that top of the T is always positive. So now I'm just going to simply connect the wires to the Dean's connector. Always give it time to set. And if you're having trouble, with melting, bigger surfaces, the best thing to do is just apply more flux or more solder with flux to your iron itself, and that will allow it to melt quite a bit faster. So that actually looks really nice. So from there, I'm going to just bring up the shrink wrap, apply it. Now this shrink wrap is, pretty sure it's the 3/16, and this shrink wrap is special. It has adhesive on the inside of it, so it's less likely to come apart. So I would look for that online, see if you can locate it. When it's still hot on the shrink wrap, what I usually do is just kind of push it up just to get it in place. And you might be able to see the adhesive on the inside here. So there, that's the rifle itself. Move that out of the way. Next, we're going to do the battery. Now, it's important on the battery, like I mentioned before, to just do one connector at a time. If you do them both, there's going to just increase likelihood of your terminals or the wires touching and causing some major damage there. So I'm just going to cut it a little bit shorter. That way I can salvage this Tamiya connector if I want to use it later on. I'm just twisting the wire here. That way it'll allow it to keep all the wire strands together. This is a little thicker than the other wire that was used before. That guy's done. Go ahead and tin the connector here. And these helping hands really do come in handy. Again, here's your shrink wrap. Set it and push it far back so it doesn't heat up. Going to add flux to the iron. Connect everything. So if you ever get like clumpy soldering jobs, there's a good chance that your iron is too cold. It's not hot enough. This iron setup I think costs like $50. You'll want to invest in a good iron. It will last you a long time. If you always apply flux to those tips and you don't leave the iron on for like a week at a time, those tips will usually hold up pretty well. Also, you want to make sure if you're using your iron that you have a little sponge with water on it. That way you can take off the solder that where the flux smokes off and it's just solder. You need to brush that away. You need to keep that iron relatively clean. So there's one connector. I'm going to just cut it at the exact same length as the other one. And then there's that guy. And the shrink wrap. Tin that up nicely. pushing these up. So there you go. That's a T-plug connector that's installed. Let's go ahead and test it out with the gun. See if everything works. Looks like. Okay, they're pretty stiff when they're new. There you go. It's all wired up. Thanks for watching this video. I'll be doing a bunch more. If you like them, you know, give me likes. Tell me what videos you'd like to see. I'm wanting to actually share a lot of my information that I've learned over the probably 3,000 rifles I've worked on. So as new guns come into my shop that need work, you know, I'm going to probably just film them all getting done, just so I can share that knowledge with you all. I appreciate you watching. You guys be safe out there, and I'll talk to you later.